All right, last team to hit on. Let's jump on down to the Plains, where Bryan Harsin met with the media here on Wednesday, talk about being in his COVID protocol. And the good news is he's going to be back a lot sooner than anticipated. He's going to be back, scheduled to be back at least next week on Monday. So he'll be there for virtually the entire week, heading into the opener there against Akron. So that's great news. Love to hear that. And Derek Mason, it sounds by all indication, he's back even sooner. So, a little disaster averted here. And I've seen a lot of Auburn fans saying, well, hell, now that he's had the COVID, that means he's good for the next couple months. So, hey, there's the other side of that is, the other side of the coin can be positive there as well. So I was excited to hear that. And we got some comments here from Bryan Harsin. So let's kick it over to the Auburn head
All right.
coach.
Well, thank you all for your patience and flexibility, given the development of last week. So I'm at home, isolating, feeling good, and hope it continues to be that way. I realize I'm fortunate to be able to say that. So very obviously, from what we've seen, this impacts everyone differently. So while I'm here, I've been participating in meetings and practices, and I just want to make sure that you all know our coaches, players. I can't say enough just about our staff, how they've responded. They've done a great job. Coach Schmedding has stepped up, and we've been able to operate like we normally would during this week in those meetings and on the practice field. So as I said on Friday, we have plans in place for this. And certainly, when things happen with COVID, the teams that are able to navigate this and implement the plan properly and execute it at a high level are going to be the ones that I think are going to be most successful navigating through this pandemic. Because as we've seen, that coaches, there's been some coaches out, and the ones that we've had step up and the way we've operated, I think those guys have done a very good job. So, right now we're following our mitigation protocols. We'll continue to do so. So a little bit of my timeline here. The test I took on Thursday this last week was part of what we've been regularly doing. And Dr. Goodlett informed me of my result. And so we proceeded with the standard protocols for a positive test, no different for me than anybody else in our program. As of right now, based off my timeline, I should return to the facility on Monday of this next week. So in time for game week and preparing our team for that week of practice. No other coaches or players were quarantined based off my test result. That's due to in part of our mitigation protocols that we have in place that we've been following. So I'm proud of that.
All right, so there you got it from Coach Harsin. And, I thought this was his best media availability he's had yet at Auburn. So maybe a little bit more I don't know, just not as long-winded, and he really seemed to come with a purpose on this one, and really speaking to the fans and the recruits and everybody listening. So the media, of course, especially who's on the call with him there. So I hope we get more of this Bryan Harsin moving forward, and I think he'll play a lot better across the SEC doing that. But hey, who better to talk to about the Auburn Tigers than Nathan King of Auburn Undercover, part of the 247 Sports Network. Let's kick it over to our interview with Nathan King. All right, we're pleased to be joined once again by Nathan King. He's been on the show before, and he works for the 247 Sports Network, covering the Auburn Tigers for Auburn Undercover. And you can follow him at Nathan King 247 Sports, and you got to listen to his podcast, the Auburn Undercover Podcast. Nathan, I really appreciate you hopping on the line.
Yeah, of course. How are y'all doing?
Hey, we're doing good. But before we get even into the football stuff, I mean, I even hate that I've got to bring this up, but are you in the COVID protocol like everybody else down there on the plains?
Very fortunate, I am not. I actually went home. I went and saw my wife's family. Her mom is immunocompromised, so she's having to be definitely, super safe. And we did all the testing, all the necessary stuff. We basically quarantined for the past couple of weeks, and we got to stay with them at their house for a few days for the first time in like a year and a half. So that was really fun and definitely something super special that my my wife really appreciated and enjoyed a lot. So no, we're doing really good. We're all safe and healthy. Hope y'all can say the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's great to hear. But can you give us information? Because obviously Bryan Harsin, he's come out and he's in the COVID protocol, and Derek Mason has come out and said even though he's been vaccinated, he got it. So, I don't want you to reveal any players or anything like that, but based on your reporting, I mean, do you have an idea how many staff members and players and all that this has affected?
I gathered, so basically most of this stemmed from testing last Thursday. So as we're recording this on Wednesday evening, so about a week ago, some players, several players, I would say, a good handful, not any specific chunk of any one position group. So I guess that's positive for Auburn. And then a couple coaches in addition to, obviously Bryan Harsin was, the notable one, and then it comes out later that we kind of knew at the time, we reported at the time, Derek Mason, but then he ends up coming back and saying, hey, he got it a little bit before Harsin. He actually was back in the building. He was back at practice today on Wednesday. So no, we spoke to Bryan Harsin today from inside his house. He Zoomed us from his house, and definitely one of the more insightful times we've talked to him. He definitely felt like he had to make a point about this COVID stuff. A lot of people thinking that he is not necessarily taking it very seriously. I know a lot of people have just been speculating that and coming out and saying that, and that's kind of become the narrative, but he made sure to kind of knock that out of the way and say that's certainly not the narrative. He went on to explain everything that Auburn is doing to not only fight this virus and get players vaccinated and do all the good stuff you got to do, but also educate and promote. I mean, even the university president was in there yesterday promoting the benefits of the vaccine. So they've been doing that a lot. But yeah, so now Bryan Harsin said he'll be back on Monday. Again, recording this on Wednesday, so he'll be back on Monday just in time to start game week in preparation for the season opener. And he said based on all the other players that are in protocol, they should be in pretty good shape based on the timeline. I think they're expecting to have a full roster for that season opener, given there are no other outbreaks on the team.
So was that your main takeaway from Wednesday's press availability with Coach Harsin? Was just his stance on the vaccines and whatnot? Because I gotta be honest with you, I've sat through all his press conferences, and they're not the most engaging and entertaining, but this seemed to be a little bit more personable of a Auburn head coach to me. What were your thoughts on that?
I think that's the right word. You could just kind of tell that he had that initiative and definitely wanted to get something off his chest. He's reading off a note card. So this was something that was really important to him, and kind of what I gathered is that I don't know if he took offense. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think he was bothered by the fact that this had been a narrative that had started about him. I think, whether or not he is vaccinated, again, that is something that has come up a bunch. He has still not answered and said that he is. So obviously that has led everybody to believe that he is not vaccinated. Mm-hmm. But I think the point he wanted to get across was, look, even if, I'm me and you do you, but, we have been promoting like crazy the benefits of the vaccine. And this is the first time really that he went out and spoke at length about the benefits and about how much promoting they've done. Because I think he kind of rubbed people the wrong way at SEC Media Days when he was talking about, the fact that he wasn't pushing it too hard because it was a personal decision. He also said they talked about the pros and cons. I know him saying cons kind of, people didn't really, understand that very much. And so he's really done a heel turn here, and it's definitely trying to make people aware of how seriously he's taking this right now, even if he himself has not taken the vaccine.
So switching gears to more entertaining stuff to talk about here, but Bo Nix and TJ Finley, how's that shaping up? And, I listen to the Auburn Undercover podcast, so I know what you've already reported on it, but can you share how's the quarterback competition down there on the Plains?
Yeah, it's as deep a room as they've had in a long time, and there's nothing that shows the importance of that more than what happened in the past week. Obviously Bo Nix was not one of those guys, and TJ Finley not one of those guys that was out because of COVID. But I mean, it could happen. Your quarterback isn't immune. Your starting quarterback isn't immune to that. So you really just never know what's going to happen this season. And the fact that Auburn now believes that it has pretty quality depth at not only the backup position with TJ Finley, But the third stringer, Demetrius Davis, he's a 4-star freshman out of Houston. He's the winningest quarterback in high school football history in Texas, surpassing even Kyler Murray. He's done a lot of good stuff this preseason. He has been a guy who was there for the spring, really kind of developed there, started to learn the playbook, and he's really turned some heads in scrimmage settings and making things happen outside the pocket. But I just kind of wanted to give him his due real quick before saying that it is Nix and Finley, the 1 and the 2 right now. They are far and away. Obviously, you have the most advantages right now. Harsin did say that, if we were to play a game tomorrow, that Bo Nix would be the starter. That should not be a surprise to anybody who has been paying attention to anything. I think TJ Finley has been really helpful. He's been really beneficial for this room. I think he's exactly what Bo Nix needed. A guy that is not just going to come. They didn't need somebody who was going to come in and try to take his job. Like, obviously, Finley's trying to take his job, but they didn't need somebody to come in and replace him and be that guy that's head and shoulders, right next to him. They needed a guy like Finley who's going to nip at his heels, provide that pressure, and force Bo to be the best version of himself every day in practice. Because something that not only Nix has said to us, but also all of his teammates, is that he's the best when he's a competitor. And I think that showed in 2019 when he beat out Joey Gatewood, and they kind of have some magical moments that season. There's that pressure going on that you don't want to lose that starting job. Nix is definitely feeling that right now, and seems like all signs are pointing to him having a pretty good fall camp. Finley's coming along well, but I really just don't foresee a situation where Finley is really too dangerous to that starting quarterback job. Maybe let's talk again, week 7 or week 8 if things start to crumble down. But for right now, for the way things are going, Bo has the good control of this offense, and he'll be the starter for the foreseeable future.
Now, we all know Tank Bigsby, one of the best not only running backs, but maybe overall players in the SEC, just voted to the coaches All-SEC first team. And Sean Shivers, we know what we're getting in him. He's a very solid player. But any concerns with the running back group behind them? I mean, who's Auburn's third guy there? Because you got to think in a Mike Bobo system, they're going to lean heavily on the ground game.
Sure. Yeah, there can be some concerns. I think the concerns would be on a numbers basis. So I think the magic number for a running back rotation is probably 5, even if you don't use that 5th guy very much, or maybe you don't even use that 4th guy very much. But you need to have 5 running backs that you can rely on. Right now, Auburn's only got 4 scholarship running backs. The 2 guys behind, like you said, Bigsby and Shivers, we know what we're getting with that 1-2 punch. You've got Jordan Ingram, who is a second-year player. He's at Central Michigan last season. He did not play, but he's an in-state kid from Alabama, from Mobile, that wanted to go to Auburn that first time around, ended up not working out that way. Now he's able to transfer in. He's kind of that taller. He's like 6'1", a little more slender. He'll look like a Kerryon Johnson when he's out there. He's got that kind of a build. He's a very smooth, patient runner, good catching the ball out of the backfield. And then you've got a true freshman in Jarquez Hunter, which, I mean, there are many people within the program that don't think that he is the diamond in the rough of this recruiting class. Only a 3-star prospect, but he's the number 1 player in Mississippi in terms of an offensive perspective. And then he's also the leading rusher in Mississippi last season, and just a really, really productive player at the high school level. He's kind of that short, stocky, kind of reminds you of a Trey Mason, the way that he's able to just kind of punch his way through the line of scrimmage and find an area to burst through. So you've got your 2 different types of backs there. Right now, what we've seen in fall camp is that they're going to kind of split that number 3 job. So I would expect maybe both of those guys to get anywhere from 3, 4, to 7 carries a game, that kind of thing, just because their skill sets are so different. But you're exactly right. I mean, there could be some concerns, just because my thing is what if something happens to Tank Bigsby? We saw him have some injuries last season, and now you're asking 2 first-year players within your program, 2 first-year players overall, actually, to come in and have a big impact on your offense when, like you said, Mike Bobo likes to run the ball a lot. So we'll see how that goes. They've had some good walk-on production so far, but that's certainly not something you want to rely on either.
Well, speaking of question marks, it's been a question mark seemingly for a number of years there on the Plains, but what about the offensive line with Will Friend, first-year offensive line coach, running Bobo's system there? How settled is that group with, we're basically a week out from game day?
Not settled. They wanted this thing done a little faster. There have been, so I guess I should have prefaced early on. I haven't really done many other radio stuff or podcast stuff since fall camp started. Mm-hmm. But we've got, and I don't know how much of this even applies, but the coaches are asking us, obviously they can't force us to do anything, but asking us not to disclose like injury information from practice, stuff like that, yada, yada. I just don't want my access pulled, so I'm just, going to go along with it, whatever. But I will just say that the offensive line has had guys miss a good bit of practice this preseason. And so when you thought you knew what you had, things were kind of thrown, a wrench was kind of thrown into things, and now they had to try a lot of different lineups. Luckily, they had 8 guys from last season who have starting experience. Because of the injuries, they got some extra starting experience in there. My best guess right now, and Bryan Harsin actually gave us a 2 deep on the offensive line today, which was pretty nice. Maybe he felt bad for, not being able to talk to us after the scrimmage. But my best guess right now, you've got Austin Troxell. I think he's going to take that left tackle spot. Brandon Council, who got injured last season, he was their best offensive lineman. He's playing right guard. I believe it looks like he's going to actually nail down that left guard spot. Nick Brahms, first team All-SEC. We know what you got with him. He's going to be the center. At right guard, Keandre Jones, who came in for Council after he got hurt. I think he's going to be that guy at right guard. And then right tackle is a battle between Brodarius Ham, who made the coaches All-SEC team on the 3rd team, and then a guy named Brendan Coffey, who's a JUCO player, has developed pretty well in the past year. So we'll see what happens between those. But no, it's not locked down, and I think they wanted it to be, and seems like it might be a couple weeks before it is. But the good news for Auburn, my coworker Mark Murphy called it a couple exhibition games they've got coming up. They play Akron and Alabama State. No offense to those programs, but I think Auburn, that's a pretty helpful situation before that Penn State game to maybe try to figure things out on the O-line.
And how's the secondary coming along under Derek Mason? I know there's a lot of talent there, and they've had some transfers. One in particular, Donovan Kaufman's already familiar with Coach Mason's system, but how are those pieces fitting together? Do you think that'll be a strength of this Auburn team?
I think it's the best. I think it's the best unit on the roster. I think linebacker is probably not far behind it. What we saw with Chandler Wooten today was named a captain. I think their 3 linebackers are really, really good. But yeah, that secondary, it's just loaded, and it got even better this fall, like you talked about with those transfers. They brought in 3 transfers in the secondary, all of which are making a really big impact in fall camp. Donovan Kaufman, Harsin said today, he's their starting nickel. So came right in, like you said, was comfortable with Mason's system, and is slotted right in there at the nickel spot. Darius Knighton has been the starting safety alongside Smoke Monday for most of fall camp. That's still not set in stone. There's some competition going on there, but looks like he'll be the guy. Knighton came from Southeast Missouri State, where he was an FCS All-American. And then a guy who was added late in the process named Roturius Torrance. He was a JUCO player of the year at the JUCO level, a 6'3" corner. You don't see that very often. I think he was kind of forgotten about in the steep cornerbacks rotation. People, thinking about what the lineup is going to look like. I don't think his name was brought up super often, but he is going to be in the starting mix right now. He has been actually one of their best playmakers all throughout fall camp. He had a 100-yard pick six in their second scrimmage, and in the scrimmage before that, he had a deflection on the goal line, batted down a pass on the goal line on 4th and goal. And so he's been a guy who's been all over the place, making really good plays for that defense. But that's, contrary to your previous question about the offensive line, the secondary is in a great spot. That they know what they've got right now. Guys are versatile enough to play multiple positions. We know Derek Mason is a phenomenal defensive coach, and yeah, they're certainly going to lean on that group at the start of the year, 100%.
All right, last question for you, Nathan. I really appreciate all the time you've given me, but we all anticipate Auburn's going to be 2-0 to start the season. I mean, they start with 2 cupcake teams. It would be stunning if they're not 2-0. How big is this Penn State game for, so many things, the season and people buying into Bryan Harsin? It's already announced it's going to be a whiteout game. I got to assume that Penn State's going to be a big favorite in that game. But, how much momentum can be captured if Auburn goes up there and goes on the road and beats Penn State?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's one of those games where a loss isn't the end of the world. I mean, it's week 3. You're starting out a new system on both offense and defense, and that, like you said, that's going to be a hostile road environment where Penn State's trying to bounce back, and they'll be a big favorite. Nobody is going to fault you that much for losing that game. But on the flip side, you're exactly right. If you pull off that upset, that is going to be a huge amount of momentum pushing forward, especially because you look at what Auburn's got after that. The first 2 SEC games for Bryan Harsin, welcome to the SEC, at LSU and at home against Georgia. So those aren't necessarily going to be easy wins. Both of those might be tougher than the Penn State matchup. And so if you can gather some momentum, maybe catapult yourself into the, not that polls matter that much, but, put yourself in the top 15, have your offense feeling good. You go and grab a road victory where we know Bo Nix hasn't been super consistent on the road in his career. And then you come and you play LSU and Georgia to start the SEC. You're 4-0 when going into those games. You're talking about maybe a completely different mindset for this team as opposed to if you dropped that Penn State game. So maybe not completely different. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, because I do think this team, it's going to take its lumps. It's got a really difficult schedule. I think they can be, if they end up 7-5, which is probably what I think they're going to land at, they'll probably be one of the better 7-5 teams in the country. They just got a really difficult schedule. But no, you're exactly right. That Penn State game, a loss is not a killer. Nobody's gonna turn up their nose too much at that one on a national level and say, oh, Bryan Harsin's not getting it done. But if you get a victory in a big setting like that, primetime ABC game, whiteout, everyone's watching, and they say, oh, looks like Auburn's got it together with Bryan Harsin. Maybe the offense is clicking and it's looking a lot different than it did under Gus Malzahn. That's going to be a really big benefit for the program. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that one in week 3.
All right, he's Nathan King. Got to give him a follow at Nathan King 247 Sports of Auburn 24/7 Undercover. I really appreciate you, Nathan.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
All right, so I want to say thanks again to Nathan King for hopping on the line. Give us the lowdown on the Auburn Tigers heading into the season.